So it's great to be with you here this morning. And for those of you who are new to this class, this talk is a little bit more depressing than the others, but I give it with a strong intention. And I hope it's received that way as well. I have a couple of stories to share to open up. So in 1990, from 1999 to 2002, I worked at the University of California, Berkeley, um, in the development office as someone who raised funds for the various projects that the professors were working on and needed money building labs and all kinds of things. And at one point, I was asked by the College of Letters and Science to write, I did quite a bit of writing too, to write like a newsletter of what everyone in the College and Letters of Science were doing, or select folks. So I went to visit a new professor. I'm actually forgetting what department she was in, but she was working on climate change research. And so this was, again, it was probably around 2000, 2001. And I remember sitting down, she was telling me about her research that and how dire it was. And I said, so, what's the timeline for this to turn it around? And she said, oh, the timeline's already started ticking. The clock is ticking. It's actually too late. And this was, 20 years ago. And she said something really important. She said, but I don't think it'll ever get reported that way. You'll hear that there's still something that we can do, and maybe there's little things we can do, but ultimately the clock is already ticking. And I thought, oh wow, you know. And she said, I doubt you're going to put that in your newsletter. She's like, because people don't want to hear it. Um, and I said, oh no, I'll put it in the newsletter, and I did. And yeah, some eyebrows were raised because everyone was really focused on um, having more time. This dire situation was at some point in the future. And isn't that often what we do with things that are unpleasant or that we don't want to address right now? We want to put off the unpleasant into the future, sometimes acting like there's some finish line in the future that we'll get to. And this kind of pulling the wool over our own eyes is a form of delusion that is really persistent in our culture. And so that's my first story. My second story is a little bit more dire. And some of you may have heard this woman. I was just driving along minding my own business the other day, and the BBC was on in the car, and there was a geophysicist from Sweden, and the BBC host, I'm forgetting his name, but he's pretty buttoned up, and he's interviewing her, and she's telling him that the ice sheet in Greenland is melting, which we know that these ice sheets are melting. But the fascinating thing was that she was describing that how when the ice turns to water, it it puts an enormous amount of pressure on the rest of the ice sheet and then puts an enormous amount of pressure on the Earth's crust below. And that this is a cause for earthquakes, big earthquakes, and that they're like earthquakes of like 8.7 to 9.2 or something. And so the BBC host was like, oh, and I could tell in his mind he was wanting to do the exact same thing that that I was wanting to do with the Berkeley scientist, which was say, oh, but not right now, right? That's going to happen in the future, right? Or not in my lifetime or my children's lifetimes. And to her credit, the Swedish scientist said, no, like now, like this starting now. And the BBC guy he really was paused. He was really thrown off his interviewing game for a moment. And he said, oh, like, so So like now, and then he kept trying to push it into the future. And it was just a really like a master class in waking up to reality about not just what we've done to the planet, but how little time we have. Um, and which can be looked at in a few different ways. I mean, how little time we have in this human body ever, even if everything in the world is perfect. This human life is fleeting, and the life of the planet is fleeting. It's on a grander scale, but it's happening now. And so this propensity to not meet each moment with the degree of preciousness that is required is is a real pitfall that human beings do, and it's something that the Buddha addressed quite succinctly and sharply when addressing his followers, and he was talking, of course, about the fleeting nature of this human life and this precious opportunity to even be in this body. Uh, that we take this seriously, that we understand what it means to have a human birth, that we have the capacity to understand our surroundings, that we have the capacity to read and think and interact with others and plan for the future, and all of these things, this precious human birth that so often we squander because we think it's going to go on forever, or that on some level we think, oh, that's for other people, even though on another level we know it's true. And so, yeah, I love this quote from Padmasambhava, who was an early Tibetan Buddhist mystic, and he wrote, "Now, when the bardo of this life is dawning upon me," meaning this human life is considered a bardo state, an in-between state of birth and death. So when the bardo state of this life is dawning on me, I will abandon laziness, for which life has no time. Enter, undistracted, the path of listening and hearing, reflection and contemplation and meditation, making perceptions and mind the path, and realize the three kayas, the enlightened mind. Now that I have once attained a human body, there is no time on the path for the mind to wander. And so, yeah, really just kind of underscoring, now that I have attained a human body, there's no time on the path for the mind to wander. And so this is some of the this quality of urgency is something that Western teachers don't often bring to their teaching, because we're so focused on mindfulness, cultivating mindfulness so that this human life becomes easier, right? So, and it works. I mean, being mindful, being aware and curious about your moment to moment experience, the ability to not let your mind wander off into, you know, worry and fear and doubt and all of those things. It's a wonderful side effect of the practice. And often that's kind of where it stops. It's like I want this practice so that I can feel better in this human life. And maybe that will ripple out to those around me as well. And so, not to knock that thing that draws many people to the practice of meditation, but I sometimes feel like it's not ballasted when this other piece of urgency does not come alongside it. And so I just was really reminded of those two kind of climate change stories, that how often we delude ourselves that this is going to go on forever, that there's not this sense of urgency. And so when Padmasambhava says that he's going to abandon laziness, for which life has no time, it can seem like he's talking about like all the fun things in life, abandoning joy and so forth. But it's really, I think it's the abandoning of distractions. So he says, enter undistracted, the path of listening and hearing, reflection and contemplation and meditation. Meditation's the only thing on that list that's really like this formal practice of I'm sitting here with my eyes closed and honing my ability to stay present no matter what happens, and to have to set the tone in the mind and the body and the heart for wisdom and understanding to arise. Uh, the other things, this path of listening and hearing, reflection and contemplation, it's reflection on the brevity of life, and the importance of waking up, seeing clearly, and then helping others along the path as well. Another reflection that helps with this is the set of 5 daily recollections recommended by the Buddha, which I know we've talked about before, and they are these things that are advised to repeat to yourself every day. As you wake up, having these on the nightstand, just a little reflection, or on the bathroom mirror. Um, I am of the nature to grow old. I have not gone beyond aging. I am of the nature to be ill. I have not gone beyond illness. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond death. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, will change and vanish. I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, related to my actions, supported by my actions. Whatever actions I do, whether good or evil, of those I shall be the heir. So these 5 reflections, really a stark reminder of this human life, so that we don't kind of we don't misunderstand what's happening here. And it's actually, I've always found those 5 reflections to be really uplifting. There's something about hearing the truth that feels uplifting to me. The delusions that I often find myself getting lost in as well have a tightness and a heaviness to them. It's almost as if, on some level, even that part of me who wants to believe that I'll be here forever, or that, we're really just looking for pleasurable experience, even that part knows it's not true. So there's a just a real spaciousness in the truth of what's actually happening right here, and then an opportunity, to orient the practice in the direction of waking up. So yeah, these reminders are kind of simple statements of fact, but within our culture of denial, they comprise kind of a radical manifesto of reality. Uh, don't wait for illness or death. So yeah, just thinking it can be helpful when hearing, a teaching like this, to think, the next step is, well, okay, well, what do I do? What am I supposed to be doing? um, yeah, and so we're all here together. We're listening to this talk, and we're really, have some intentionality around this practice of meditation, of generosity and kindness. And as we see in our world today, even, the climate change catastrophe is unfolding before our eyes. We can see the floods and the fires, and um, it is now. I think about that Berkeley professor a lot. Yeah, it is happening in my lifetime. And beyond the climate crisis, we see all kinds of other crises of the human spirit, of violence and delusion, of unplaying in the world. And we can, I think, as part of our practice, keep that in the forefront, knowing that we are vehicles of peace and loving kindness, and through our practice, we are able to stay grounded in that place even when the rest of the world is on fire. It really gives us the ability, um, just that ability to be present and to respond to what's real and what matters. Um, Other human beings, all life on the planet, just this next right thing in this moment. When we're pulled off into despair or panic about things, we neurologically lose our ability to respond from a place of intention. Um, yeah, we know that for a fact now. So it only makes sense that we learn to stabilize the mind, body, and heart. And this practice is a wonderful way to do that so that our work in the world and with other people is wise. All the actions that we take will be wise, and that we may have this slow dawning experience of waking up. So it can be helpful to think about skillfully, to do some inquiry about the ways that we squander this life. And this is another thing I found the practice really allows, is for me to get real with myself um, about the things that I do to distract myself from anxieties and all the the patterns and the negative feedback loops that I sometimes can get involved in. And so this is a really tough one because it's sort of like the many aspects of your own mind, including the ones who want to keep all this stuff under the rug, kind of engaging with them, like dialoguing. Um, this can be part of your meditation practice, just calming the mind and really inviting um, inviting the truth about how we squander this human life. We work to attain material things. We think, oh, life will be better when I can just, have this certain material thing. If I'm able to save up enough money for this piece of furniture or this vacation, um, we squander our life by trying to impress other people, right? By spending a lot of time caring about the way we present ourselves in the world, the way we look, um, how we present ourselves at our job. Uh, Often we're working at jobs we hate that we know are like soul sucking. Um, and granted, this last year and a half has probably not been the time to quit a job, but it's something we can definitely look at, the relationships that we're engaged in and all of that that's really squandering this precious life. We spend a lot of time trying to control things and people uh, that are beyond our control. Like that's a delusion that it's even possible to change other people. Um, and yet we keep trying and trying um, instead of being fully present and joyful with what is unfolding moment to moment. Uh, that's where that's the trade-off. So in the Buddhist teachings, it's one of the contemplations that we're asked to come back to again and again is, am I willing to trade a small pleasure for a greater pleasure? And so these things we do to make our lives comfortable are like small pleasures. Am I willing to trade that for this bigger pleasure of seeing clearly, of waking up? So simple things can help to bring us out of this trance. As I mentioned, just creating a regular practice of coming into presence. I recommend a formal practice of sitting, no matter how long you're practicing each day, to just have a regular touch point in the day where you sit down and have this intention to be fully present and feel into your own body. Allow the stories in the mind to settle, feeling into the heart, getting real with what's happening in this moment, allowing things to be as they are, even when they're really unpleasant, when fear is heightened. So we can't whitewash the uncomfortable aspects of this practice and sort of bypass until we're spiritual or, falsely awakened. That's not our call. Our call is to be present with whatever's arising. So as we're sitting, often we'll notice, this is what's present for me because all day we've been keeping it down. Um, this is what's real. And it can feel crunchy and uncomfortable in the beginning, but it starts to move. And it's sort of like telling the truth in those 5 reflections. The truth does set you free. That's true. And we come back around to it in many different ways. We can realize that when I'm real with what's happening in this moment, there's a freedom in that actually can bring some spontaneous joy. And when we're free of the delusion, then our actions are much more skillful that we take in the world to alleviate our own suffering and the suffering of others. Paying attention, yeah, going back to Padmasambhava's words, being undistracted wherever you are, just taking some touch points, even, if you wear a watch, set one of those alarms for like 5 times a day to just, they'll start beeping no matter where you are, to just take some deep breaths and pay attention. What's going on around you? What's the feeling tone in your own mind, body, and heart? What can you see in your surroundings? Listening and hearing. This makes your interactions with other people much more authentic, to not get so caught up in speaking, but in listening with the full body, reflection and contemplation and meditation, the practice of compassion and kindness, even when those other aspects of mind can be really heightened, the anger, the self-righteousness, as we read things that other people are saying and doing. We have lots of opinions about what's going on in the country and the world. And so even when we cross paths with those people, right, we can notice how our mind so quickly like segments people into groups, taking down the walls and meeting each individual with compassion, extending this energy of loving kindness. It's hard to be human. It's precious, and we all know the difficulty of what it's like to be in this human body with these minds that are so restricted. They're programmed by our causes and conditions throughout our life. It's so little information. It's shockingly little information, actually, that programs this computer. So when we come across someone else with a much different view of the world, that's the compassion piece. Just what it's like to uh, to be so restricted with our understanding of what's actually going on in the world. And this isn't a judgment. Oh, like I pity you because you've had such a sheltered upbringing. It's not that, it's ourselves too. We know that these minds process like a very small percentage of what's out there in the world. I mean, dogs and cats can see more than we can. Just seeing. We can't even see everything. The full spectrum of colors is not even available to us. Can you imagine what else is not available to us? Um, the ways we perceive, it's so limited. So the only kindness makes sense anymore. As Naomi Shihab says in my favorite poem called Kindness, kindness is the only thing that makes sense when we're in these human bodies having this human experience. And so is everybody else. So these are some of the ways that we practice, um, formally on the cushion and really informally. The practice really takes shape off the cushion. Yeah, sometimes the formal practice of meditation is not called practice. It's called pleasant abiding, calm abiding. It's like a gift to sit there on the cushion, even when our own minds are swirling around. At least it's just our stuff. The practice begins when we stand up and walk out the front door, or even engage with others in our own families who live with us. Yeah, that's the practice. And so, yeah, bringing a sense of urgency, however that makes sense to you, reflecting on the brevity of this life. And one of the ways that this seems less depressing, I experience it as less like, ugh, something I don't want to do, is because I actually love doing this, is to reflect back over the past 20 years or more and to savor the waking up that's taken place over just this, even the past year, 5 years, whatever. This is a real, provides a real energy for the practice to continue, that we realize, oh, I have become more compassionate. I have widened my understanding of many things that have led me to let go more and more over this time. And it actually fuels your practice into the future. So that's just another thing as we're reflecting that I'm the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions. Yeah. And my actions bear fruit, and I'm living the fruit of those actions now as my reactivity to triggers has gone way down. My understanding of other people, all those things that you might have seen bear fruit in your own practice. Um, so, yeah, let's leave it there for today. That's a lot. That's a lot. But just an invitation to not not forget about the urgency. It's here now, as the Swedish scientist said. I wish I had remembered her name. I would love to look up her research as a reminder. Don't be the BBC guy, right? Who keeps trying to change the words, change the scenario so that it's not urgent for us. Oh, that'll be like after I'm dead, right? And the Swedish woman saying, no, I'm talking about now. Yeah, we're talking about now. So thank you for your time this morning.